Have you ever wondered what is the foundational philosophy behind the idea of Superman? Where did Superman even come from? This self compassionate that represents all good, all peace, all hope, this symbol of self sacrifice. Where did that idea originate and how can we apply it into psychology? It actually originated from Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy that he took from Zarathustra. And sorry if I mispronounced some of these German words, but it's from an old philosopher, Zarathustra. And he coined the idea of an Übermensch or an overman. This is somebody that has higher philosophies and morals than the normal man. Or, in other words, man is the bridge between beast and the overman, the Übermensch. So, we're going to talk about how the Ubermensch came to be. And this is a three-part series, or actually a four-part series. So, today we're going to talk about the philosophy behind performance psychology. Where did we get the idea of becoming the best ultimate version of ourselves? Where did this morality come from? And then in the second part, tomorrow, we're going to talk about the psychology and the foundations of performance psychology, where we got the idea of actually achieving impossible things. And that leads right into day three. We're going to go over the art of impossible and the true science and the neurology behind what happens behind flow states, which is what high performers need, what you need in your life. You don't have to be a high performer. You can be a sales rep, an athlete, you can be a mom, a dad, a brother, you can be an employee, you can be an entrepreneur, whatever. You need to perform in your life. So, how do you use these philosophies to perform? And then finally, we're going to go over very highly tactical applications in part four, which is going to be talking about The Fearless Mind by Dr. Craig Manning, who is my mentor for performance psychology alongside Iron Cowboy and multiple others. But today we're diving into Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil to go over kind of the core philosophies that laid the foundation for this work. Now, if you're not a super philosophical person, don't worry, I'm not going to dive really deep into this. We're going to stay pretty surface level and so that we can just have a base understanding of what we're going to flow into next. Friedrich Nietzsche, he's an influencer as far as modern psychology goes and philosophy and the science of performance. So, by the end of this, you're going to know, by the end of this training, part one, today's training, you're going to know how to apply the Ubermensch mindset into your life, your sales, your business to transcend, to overcome societal norms by embracing struggle and creating your own values in your life. So, again, we're going to cover Ubermensch philosophy, the will to power, joy through suffering, and then we're going to go over beyond good and evil. So, let's go dive in. The first part we're going to cover here is the actual philosophy of the Ubermensch. There was a story in Thus Spoke Zarathustra that there was a man on a tightrope, and the whole city was watching him up on his tightrope. And he ended up falling, and he fell. And as he was dying, Zarathustra was holding him in his arms. He said, I need to go after the people that are trying to achieve these crazy big things. And that's what flow states have been typically in society. It's been people trying to achieve massive things that seem impossible. So, how can somebody achieve the impossible? It's by overcoming man, by overcoming first yourself. By overcoming the self, you can become what he called Ubermensch or the overman, the superior man. And this lets you create meaning outside of what the societal norms are trying to tell you. That's going to be a very common theme is create your own morality. Don't do what society says you should do. Do what you believe is right and apply it into a higher moral stance and inflict this is the wrong way to say it, but impose your power, impose your will onto other people because it is a higher way of being. That was his philosophy. I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying that was his philosophy. So the takeaway from the Ubermensch is to stop waiting for permission from somebody else, some other entity. Stop waiting for somebody to tell you to live a spectacular life. Go and create your life. That's step number one here. This next one here is that Friedrich Nietzsche said that with great suffering With great passion comes great suffering. And if you followed me a little bit with the MindFit philosophy, is that life is passion. You should suffer for what you're willing to go out there and achieve and do. Passion is suffering, and suffering is passion. They are one and the same. So Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, talked about how this joy and
Symbol of
suffering are inseparable.
self-sacrifice.
And if
Where
you
did that
say
idea
yes
originate,
to
and
joy,
how can we
you are
apply
also
it
saying
into
yes
psychology?
to suffering. It actually, they are one and the same. If you want to be happy, you have to accept the sad. If you want to taste the sweet, you have to taste the bitter. There is opposition in all things. You have to see both sides of it. So, he who has a why can bear almost any how. If you have a why, that's what the Ubermensch is, a why higher than yourself, you can endure any how. How you're going to achieve the goal in front of you is important. And that is where you have to suffer for what you're passionate about. So for performance, this is going to be getting you into a flow state to achieve mastery, which we're going to talk more in part 2, 3, and 4 of this series. Zarathustra talked a lot about the will to power, and that this is the purpose of life. It's to be present and to experience joys, highs, lows, experience everything in the fullness that it offers you, but then to have power over your environment. First, power over yourself, then power over others, and then power over your entire environment to be able to create whatever it is you're trying to do. That was a quick one. We kind of touched on it already. The last one is about Thus Spoke Zarathustra, before we get into Beyond Good and Evil, is have joy instead of pity. When you see somebody that's disabled or a homeless person, don't have pity on them. Instead, have joy. Have joy in your life and gratitude, but also just joy that you're all alive in the first place. Just switch the emotion. You can control this emotion. He says to reject weakness as a virtue, but celebrate life even in the struggle. So even though you're struggling, there is virtue in it. And this is where you reject weakness. Don't accept weakness. Weakness is just struggle. So you should always find beauty, laughter, and kindness even in the midst of this suffering or weakness. Because your energy as a leader, your energy as somebody trying to persuade and influence inspires more than your words will ever inspire anybody. It's that old phrase of actions speak louder than words. Now diving into Beyond Good and Evil, I wrote down a bunch of notes here, and so I'm going to dive into this, just hit really high level stuff, and then we'll wrap it up so we can have you move on to part 2. Nietzsche says to move beyond simple morality into higher living, into a higher self-actualized state. If you want to learn more about self-actualization, you can go look at Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs and different morality levels. That's beyond the scope of our training today. But the purpose of that is you look at different things like morality itself, religion, art, justice, mercy, culture. All of these things are really just social constructs. So don't be bound by what society tells you to do. Instead, create your own values. And a quote I liked from him was, "He who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster." That's a very simple philosophy. So the challenge with that is to not just overthrow society, not to just deconstruct these societal constructs, not to take them apart, but to rebuild all of these ideas with higher ideals. And thus creating, we go back to the Ubermensch, the overman, the superman. So for you, my challenge is also to don't just follow somebody else's playbook, somebody else's moves, somebody else's things. Create your own frameworks, your own systems, your own values that are unique to you so that you can become one of one, or as Alex Hormozy would say, one of zero. 5 really quick points from Beyond Good and Evil is that it is the herd mentality versus higher morality. Don't be ruled by the crowd. Next is overcoming the self is the highest act of being, to just become who you are. And that true strength, not dominance over others, but mastery over self. Mastery over self and then influence over others is the right way to go. The role of opposites is important, having good and evil, joy and suffering, bitter and sweet, is a catalyst for growth, and it's how you truly experience the good and the bad of life. And then, in order to build new societies, an individual must first create themselves. So, you should go and create yourself. The Overman, the Ubermensch, is not about being better than others. It's about being better than who you were yesterday. Friedrich Nietzsche laid the foundation for performance psychology by demanding that we embrace suffering, create our own values, and master ourselves in whatever environment we're in. And I'm being reminded of a Kobe Bryant quote where the mob mentality is becoming the best version of yourself in whatever circle you dance in. You don't have to be the best basketball player. Just be the best father. Be the best salesperson. Be the best spouse. Be the best version of you possible. And that's how you're going to be able to live. So, tomorrow in part two, we're going to bring this philosophy into a bit of science and the base of performance psychology with Stephen Kotler's The Rise of Superman. You're going to see Nietzsche's Overman, how it connects directly to our modern day performance breakthroughs. Breakthroughs like Tom Brady, Michael Phelps, Shaun White, and all of these elite level athletes. We're going to see how this philosophy translates into their ideology today. So that's everything. I'll see you tomorrow for part two.